O meu nome é Rui Marques e represento a Mobile Marketing Association em Portugal. Agradeço a vossa presença neste primeiro Fórum Mobile 2013. Vamos dar início ao painel subordinado ao tema Mobile Insights and Trends. Infelizmente, o nosso convidado Paul Burney, o CMO and Managing Director da Europe, Middle East and Africa, da MMA, não vai poder estar presente porque sofreu ontem um acidente que o impediu de voar para Portugal. De qualquer forma, vamos contar com a presença de Benjamin Ensor, que é Vice President de E-Business and Channel Strategy da Forrester, e de Cedric Forey, Managing Partner da Greenwich Consulting Paris. So, without further delay, let's welcome Mr. Benjamin Ensor.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So thank you to Alexandra for inviting me to be here. It's a great pleasure. So I'm a research director at Forrester Research, which is a global research company, and our role is to try and help people like you, marketing, strategy, and technology executives, to take better decisions by giving you research that helps you understand the trends in the market. And I'd like to talk about what we call the mobile mind shift and the way in which we're seeing consumer behavior fundamentally changed by mobile technologies. And I want to do that by looking at three questions. Firstly, what is the mobile mind shift? Secondly, what are good practices to engage with your customers through mobile? And thirdly, how should you develop your mobile strategies? I want to start by going back a few years to 2005, when Pope Benedict was elected Pope. And some of you may have seen this already, so I realize there'll be a couple of people for whom this is no surprise. But this was the scene when Pope Benedict was announced at the Vatican. And as you can see, it's people watching, one or two people with a mobile phone in the crowd. Just 8 years later, when Pope Francis became Pope, and look at the difference. In those 8 short years, the way in which we interact and get information has been transformed. Many of us, many of your customers, behave in fundamentally different ways now to how we behaved 8 years ago. It's hard almost to believe how recently technologies like the iPad and the iPhone were actually launched, because they've become so fundamental to how many of us behave, how many of us get information. It's difficult to look back to a time before we had them. So what's going on here? What's happening is those devices have unleashed a huge amount of creativity through mobile apps. And it's this connection between the devices and applications that's creating this storm of innovation, this rapid increase in the pace of change and pace of innovation over the past few years. But of course, those applications are nothing without the connections into companies, into their systems, into those organizations that bring the data, the information that's relevant to customers. But the biggest change, the mind shift, is actually happening between us and our devices, because what's happening is our expectation of how we can get information, the information that's available to us through our fingertips, has been fundamentally transformed. In those 8 short years, we've gone from thinking that mobile devices were a handy way of seeing what was on the internet while we were out and about, to now expecting that information on that device will be directly and personally relevant to us. We expect our devices to have information that's directly relevant to us, giving us more of what we want when we want it. So the mobile mind shift is this expectation that any desired information or service is available on any appropriate device in context at your moment of need. So we're all becoming a little bit like the teenagers, who want everything right now because we're starting to get it. Many companies are giving us better and better services through mobile devices, and it means we expect that from everyone. So what that means for you as business executives is you need to go through a mobile mind shift because your company needs to deliver the information your customers want on any device in context at your customer's moment of need. And that's a big shift. And it's a shift that we found many senior executives haven't fully grasped. I'm sure most of you will recognize this. There are people in your organization who absolutely get this. And there are people in your organization who are in a bit of denial, who don't quite understand and foresee the huge impact this is having on your businesses. There's people who don't want your customers to change their behavior, who don't want them to stop using branches or stores. But it's happening. Your customers are changing. Your business's survival depends on whether you too can make this mind shift. So how do you go about doing that? Fundamentally, what the ubiquity of mobile devices brings is... Sorry, wrong slide. Mobile devices are different to PCs. They're similar. They've evolved from the same root. So much like a horse is different to a dog, you can see the similarity, you can see what they have in common, but people use them for fundamentally different things. And in the same way, mobile and PCs are different. So just as dogs and horses have diverged, so too your approach to mobile strategy needs to be different to the approach you have been taking to internet strategy. And what you need to do, we believe, is take advantage of mobile's unique characteristics. Specifically, three things. The intimacy of that most personal device, that, as Alexandra said, is the first thing we pick up in the morning and often the last thing we put down at night. The immediacy of information that's right there in our hand. And the context of where we are or where your customers are and what they're doing right at that moment of need. And many firms have started to use intimacy and immediacy, but we think it's context that will be the biggest change over the next few years. So let me just spend a moment just talking about what we mean by context. To us, context is the future of mobile. The context of who I am and why I'm contacting you is what makes that interaction relevant to me. So what leading firms are doing is they're trying to use information like customers' past behavior, their current location, environmental factors, perhaps like the weather or where someone is, recent interactions, that customer's preferences, nearby merchants, to make the context of that mobile interaction more relevant to that customer, more likely to be what he or she is looking for. And in particular, you need to focus on frequent, high-quality interactions. When we look at the firms that are having most success through mobile, they're firms that are managing to build frequent, high-quality interactions with their customers. They're firms that are enabling their customers to get more of what they want. What your strategy should be depends a little bit on what kind of company you are. Whether you're a company that currently delivers high-quality experiences, a company that pleases most of its customers most of the time, or a company that doesn't. And I'm sure few of you want to admit that you're in that group, but I'm sure some of you are. You're from companies that struggle sometimes to meet your customers' expectations. And then you need to think about how frequently you interact with your customers. There are some companies that interact with their customers every day, every few days. Others that perhaps have an interaction with a company, let's say, with their customers perhaps once a year. So these two axes, the quality of the experiences and the frequency of experiences, will have a lot of impact on what your mobile strategy should be. Let's start by looking at the companies that deliver high-quality experiences and have frequent interactions. So these are companies like, let's say, Starbucks or Apple or Disney, companies that are renowned for delivering great customer experiences. What these firms are trying to do through mobile is they're trying to expand their relationships. They're trying to make those relationships with their customers better. So think about Starbucks' mobile app. They're trying to make the whole experience of getting a coffee better by having the app recognize that you're going to the store, perhaps telling the barista that you're coming so he can get your ordinary coffee ready, and actually simplifying the whole payment. So the whole experience of getting a coffee becomes better. Or a different example, look at how Disney is using not actually a smartphone, but a digital wristband to try and make the experiences in Disney World and Disneyland and so on better. Anybody who's been to a theme park, which is probably most of you, will know that one of the frustrating things is there's all this stuff and yet you're just queuing. What Disney is doing is by integrating a smart wristband into a mobile app, they're making it much easier for you to register for particular rides or particular things, so you can make better use, smarter use of your time and get more fun, more pleasure out of the experience. And Disney's doing that because they believe if they can make it a better experience, people will spend more time at Disney's properties. What about if you're in this sector? You have high-quality interactions, but you have relatively infrequent contact with your customers. So let's imagine you're in the hotel industry, you're an airline, perhaps you're a consumer goods company, perhaps you're a car manufacturer. These kind of firms that your customers like you, but you just don't interact with them that often. What we're seeing many of the leading companies in these sectors doing is they're trying to create reasons for their customers to interact with them more often. So they're trying to use mobile to become more relevant to their customers. So for example, take Nike Plus's running app, which has some 7 million users worldwide, where Nike has realized that, yes, people buy training shoes, but it's not really the training shoes they want. It's the fitness. It's the experience of running. They want to share routes. They want to discuss running with other runners. They want to track their performance. They want to see if they're getting better. And Nike is meeting customers' everyday needs and having far more frequent interactions with its customers through its app. And of course, what that's also doing is giving Nike a much better understanding of who its customers are and how they use its products. What about if you're in this quadrant? This is the tricky one. You've got poor quality experiences, typically, but high frequency. And we see a lot of banks and telecoms operators here. And this is a tricky situation. If you're having a lot of interactions with your customers, but a lot of them aren't very good, you don't necessarily want to increase the number of interactions you have. You actually need to focus on fixing and improving the interactions that you're having with your customers. So what we're seeing the successful firms here doing is they're trying to really improve the nature of the experiences they're giving their customers. Think about when you use a cash machine, an ATM. You go in to withdraw some money. You look at your balance. And when you look at your balance, you have to do a calculation. You have to think, has my mortgage payment or my rent gone out? Have these bills gone out? So you're doing a little bit of maths in your head. So banks every day are forcing all of us to do maths. Now, at school, maths wasn't that popular, and yet banks every day, they're pushing their customers to do maths. But look what Société Générale has done in France. They've used their mobile app to make banking simpler for their customers. On the homepage of Société Générale's app, there's a little fuel gauge, and that fuel gauge shows you how you're doing on your budget. It doesn't show you your balance, it shows you how much money have you got left. How much can you afford to spend this month or this week or however you've set it up. But they also let you dig in to see a whole lot more details about your finances. So banks like Société Générale are using mobile to try and make their interactions with their customers better by giving their customers more of what they need through mobile. What if you're in this group? You have poor quality experiences and you have infrequent experiences. So perhaps you're an insurance company or you're a utility, you're a gas company or an oil company. What we're seeing companies here doing is trying to redefine their service and their partnerships, trying to find new ways of interacting with customers. So for example, in the UK, Pru Health, which is an insurance company, has partnered with various other companies to try and help customers improve their health. It's good news for a health insurance company. If we look after ourselves better, that means they pay out less. It's also good news for us if we look after ourselves better. So Pru Health is partnering with other companies to try and help its customers become healthier and using mobile mobile devices, mobile apps to do that. And what all of these companies are doing, whether it's Nike or Disney or Société Générale, is they're using context. They're pulling in data from a wide variety of different sources. So insight from the device and the sensors, things about the customer's location, what direction they're facing in, who they are, their preferences. They're pulling in historical perspective, purchasing history, order status. They're pulling in social data in some cases. They're pulling in health data. They're using public as a service capabilities like mapping or augmented reality. And then running those through analytical engines to try and deliver context-rich experiences that are more relevant to their customers, creating more value for their customers. And our view at Forrester is that over the next 5 years, we'll see many companies investing more and more in trying to make greater use of context so that your mobile apps become much smarter and much more relevant to you. So how should you think about developing your own mobile strategy? And obviously in 15 minutes, I can only give you a flavor of some of our research. So I'm not really going to answer the question, but I'm going to give you a few things I think you should think about. We're finding that there's 4 things in particular that are critical to getting your mobile strategy right. The strategy itself, the organization, the goals and the metrics that you have, and the underlying technology platforms. And I want to spend a minute on each of those. So your strategy is about taking a really systematic approach to defining what your strategy is. Who are your customers? So we use a simple framework we call POST to help people remember it, because a lot of our clients come to us and say, we need an app. And we say, well, what do you need an app for? And they say, well, the chief executive wants one. So we often encourage our clients to turn it around and say, well, okay, who are your customers? What are their needs? What are their barriers? What are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve as a business? How are you going to achieve that? And only then think about which technologies are relevant to that. The second piece is to think hard about your organization. A lot of mobile strategy to date has been quite haphazard. I'm sure you've seen this in your own companies. You've got a few great people who've driven a lot of mobile development, and you've done some good stuff, but it's a little bit disconnected. So what we're seeing many leading companies now is thinking much more clearly about the roles and responsibilities within the organization and setting up enterprise-wide mobile steering committees with representation from marketing, e-business, and IT to put in place some formal governance so that the overall strategy is much more coherent than it has been to date. The third critical element is actually measuring what you're doing. So many times we're ringing companies, that we see a great mobile app and we ring the company up and we say, hey, how's it going? We love what you're doing. And they say, well, we don't really know. And we say, what do you mean you don't really know? And they say, well, we haven't really measured it. And there's a lot of companies that are still relying on measuring things like app downloads. Now, mobile app downloads is nice because you can tell that your app is popular, but it really doesn't tell you anything very useful about whether customers are actually using it or not. So what you really need to be doing is thinking through, given the objectives that we've got, given what we've promised to senior management mobile will achieve, how are we actually going to prove some of this stuff? What metrics are we going to put in place to demonstrate that the money the company is investing in mobile is actually generating business returns? So think really hard about what are we measuring? Are we measuring the right stuff? And are you measuring early enough? You need to measure before you actually launch a new initiative so that you can prove that the change in your customers' behavior is as a direct result of your strategy. And finally, you need to think really hard about technology. And this is one of the big shifts we expect to see over the next couple of years. In fact, we're already seeing, is mobile is not really about the shiny app. The shiny app or the nice mobile website is really just the tip of the iceberg. For that app or website to be relevant to your customers, you actually have to do a huge amount of work on your underlying systems and underlying governance. You have to have the right analytics in place. You have to have the right integration with customer data. You have to have privacy and security policies. You have to have governance and so on. And where we're seeing companies go wrong is they're too focused on what the customer sees and not sufficiently focused on the underlying detail. Let me give you one example of that, or one way of thinking about that. Customers expect information on mobile devices to be in real time. They expect that if you show them a piece of information about a flight or a bank balance or their shopping basket, that information will be up to date and current. And yet many of you work at companies that still have batch processing. You're processing data every night. That creates a fundamental disconnect between your customers' expectations and what you're able to deliver. So most of the work on mobile is actually going to take place here as companies build the infrastructure that they need to deliver mobile services. And the bad news here, unless I suppose you're a service provider like a vendor or a consultant, the bad news is this costs a lot of money. Getting this right costs a huge amount of money. We're seeing many of the biggest companies greatly increasing their spending on mobile. So the days of mobile on the cheap, the days of your mobile strategy being delivered by 2 or 3 people are gone. To get it right, companies are having to spend large amounts of money on their underlying infrastructure. So let me summarize. Your customers are expecting any desired information or service to be available on any appropriate device in context at their moment of need. Your customers' expectations are sky high, and you can see it in the app stores sometimes. The ratings and reviews they get, their expectations are so high and keep rising higher every time other companies deliver. You need to look to use mobile to discover and create new opportunities to interact and solve customers' larger problems. And success in mobile is going to require a clear strategy, strong cross-functional collaboration, clear governance, and adequate staffing and technology investment. And many companies haven't got that today. Now, I didn't make all of this up. This is based on research from some of my colleagues. So if you're interested, there's a number of pieces of research. Forrester has about 15, 20 analysts looking at mobile strategy and another 20 or so looking at mobile technologies. And if you'd like a copy of my slides or you'd like more details, you can register there. So thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Benjamin. So I'm Cédric Forêt, the head of Greenwich in Paris. So you will hear it from my accent, my French accent. So I hope it will be understandable for you. I'm very pleased to be here in Lisbon. Very pleased to be part of this forum, partner of this mobile forum. As you will see, I will take another perspective than Benjamin, but we have quite the same reference. I will come back on what has been said previously at the beginning. 75% of the digital business will be done by traditional players. So, in that perspective, what will be the future of physical distribution? Will it be any future, or everything will be done on mobile? So that's the question I will try to answer in these 20 minutes. Is it working or not? Which button? It's actually, okay, sorry. So maybe just a few words about Greenwich. We are a consulting company, 150 consultants, mainly based in Europe. We are a sector-based company, so we start by working in telecom and media, and then naturally around all digital topic. And now digital is part of all the sectors, so we are working with many big players on their digital transformation. So what I wanted to share with you today is the conclusion of a study we did a few months ago about the future of distribution, physical distribution. And as you will see, digital is part of the answer. So we interviewed 20 big groups, head of distribution, mainly head of physical distribution, because as you will see, very often physical distribution is managed separately for the moment. And we asked them what will be the future of their physical distribution in terms of what about digitalization of the point of sale, what will be the objectives of the point of sales in the future, what will be the size of this point of sale, the capillarity of the point of sales. What we get is very often it's seen as a big cost. So the main question they had is how I will be able to reduce my cost of my physical distribution. So we conclude on 4 trends. First one, and Benjamin already shared many aspects of that trend, there is an evolution in the behavior of clients, especially in the point of sales, and at the end of the day, the point of sales has to become digital, and the distribution will be omni-channel. And I will come back on that later on, what I mean by omni-channel and what I mean by digital. Same reference at Benjamin, so we were at the same place at the same time. So clearly, now everybody has a smartphone, everybody has a tablet, and we have to deal with that. And especially in the physical world, your client in your point of sale has a smartphone, and they are using them. And to come back also, we didn't talk with Benjamin before, but we share some conclusion. So the expectation of the client are now set on what they are living over the internet. So they are using more and more of the web, especially to get information about your product, sometimes to buy your product, but not always. And using the web, they are expecting the same kind of experience when they are visiting your stores. In terms of expectation, they are looking for personalization, so I'm looking for offers that suit me. They are looking for autonomy. In that perspective, that doesn't mean that they want to be autonomous. They want to choose what kind of autonomy they will get. So either to be totally autonomous or to get some assistance from someone in the point of sale. Third expectation, it has to be consistent from all the point of contact. Your customer is dealing with your brand, and he doesn't understand that he will not get the same service or the same answer if he's calling your service center or if he's in your point of sale. First one, multi-screen, so that means he's expecting the same service. If he's using his PC, his smartphone, his tablet, at least he wants to get the answer to his question. And last thing, socialization, so social media. Everybody is talking about social media. What does that mean for you in terms of a big brand? It means that what you are saying is not enough. Your clients are expecting some recommendation from their peer, and you have to give them when they are going to buy your product. In terms of impact for the big company, for the distribution, we define three aspects. First one is the unpredictable omnichannel. What does that mean? Previously, we used to work on cross-channel. So I mean, my client will go over the web, and then he will call my call center, and then he will go to a point of sale, and so on. Today, we cannot really predict what your client is going to do. One day, he's going to go over the web to get information, and then he will go in your shop to buy your product. The next day, he will go in your shop to get information, and finally, he will buy your product over the web. So it's really unpredictable, and we cannot really understand why he's acting like this. Second one, what we call the augmented meeting. That means there is no physical one-to-one meeting. Every time there will be a screen between your client and your salespeople. That's why I say it's not only a physical meeting, it will be supported by digital. And the last thing is what we call the benevolent big data, and Benjamin already discussed about that. Your client knows that you have a lot of data on him, on his usage, and what he's expecting. So he's really willing, he's expecting you to use this data to make his life easier. And very often we have this question, shall I put too much pressure on my client? Shall I send them too many emails? No, that's not the question today. If you have this data, you have to use them to make the relation with your client better for him, and he's expecting you to do so. Obviously, depending on your brand. If you have a credible brand, it will be easier for you to use this data, but you have to use this data in all the interaction you will have with your client. A big trend, and that's interesting when we are speaking about mobile and physical distribution, is what we call showrooming. Showrooming, that's a big fear in many countries, especially in the States, in the United States. When we ask to American customer, are you showroomer? So a showroomer is someone who is going in a shop to get information, so it spends time with the salespeople, and at the end is going to buy the product online, and maybe not from the same provider. So it's a waste of time for you and a loss of sale. When we ask people, are you doing showrooming? 50% of these people say yes. So either casual or they really think they are showroomers. So that's really a big fear for physical distribution. So I mean, you are going to pay salespeople to recommend products that are going to be sold by Amazon, for instance. To come back of what Benjamin said, 40% of these people said that they use their smartphone in the point of sale. So you have to take into account this aspect in the design of your physical distribution. And why are they acting like this? Because they are willing to get better price online, because they just want to see the product before purchasing them online. So it's really they are going in the shop on purpose just to see the product. And then there is also other issue more linked to the physical network. So you have to take into account this trend. It has been really a nightmare for companies such as Best Buy in the US fighting against Amazon. Amazon was doing special discount for customers who were located in a Best Buy point of sale. So it's really the battle starts, and you have to take it into account in the design of your network. When we think about digital in the point of sale, there are many technological lovers to do so. We are speaking about QR code, self-service, and simplified payment, but I think there will be specialists talking about all this technology in the afternoon. My message here is that it's a bit like the mobile application. It's easy to launch a new mobile application. It's easy to launch a QR code in your shop. The most difficult thing is to have a consistent strategy on all your channels. So that's the challenge. So you have to integrate what you are doing in the shop with what you are doing on your other channel, especially on the mobile and on the web. It has to be consistent for the client. And the good example of that is what Audi did in London. So it's a kind of concept store, Audi City. There is no car in the shop, which is a bit amazing for a car manufacturer. It's only big screen, so it's a lot of digital tool. There is big screen, so you can see your car in 3D. You can configure your car in the shop, but the shop is key because they help you to choose the right color, to choose the right material for your cars. So there is really this complementary between the digital and the physical part. And at the end of your journey in the shop, you get a USB key to go on with this experience over the web and maybe to buy your car over the web. So it's what I call a really consistent strategy with integrating digital in the shops. So, and I think you will come back on that aspect during the day. Why to use digital in the shop? Obviously, to give more information to your client on your product. The second one is the idea you will not force your client to buy your product in the shop. So at least if they buy your client in your website, it will be a success also for you. So how to have the right tool in the shop to make these sales happen, either in the shop or online. Third objective is really to enhance the value proposition of the shop. So it's not only a question of putting a big screen in your shop, because there will be no use, but it's really to try to provide a new customer experience with your brand, with your product in the shop, an immersive experience, as I would say. And the last objective, and Benjamin also talked about that, it's really support your salespeople in doing better sales. So giving them all the data you have on the customers, all the data to simplify the buying process. And I will explain you how we can do that. So what I call omnichannel, that's a new word. So after multi-channel, cross-channel, omnichannel. Omnichannel is really the capacity to share the data of your client on all your channel in real time. Your client doesn't understand when he starts giving you some information on one channel, he doesn't understand that he has to give you this information again on another channel. So it's the ability to share all this data on all the channels and to have really the same experience through all the channels. So then there is the question, so at a certain stage, you should be able to offer all your products, all your services on all the channels. Even if there is a cost issue, at the end of the day, your customer doesn't understand that he cannot get the same service from the different channels. Good example of that is really The Couples, which is a clothes shop. It's how you use the web to prepare your experience in the store, how you book some product you would like to try in the shop, how you localize your shop. So it's how the web make the experience in the shop better and better. Second trend, it's some of you call it big data. The issue with physical distribution compared to the web is that we have a lack of data. There were many customers going into the shop, going out without buying anything, and you have no data, no information about this customer. And even if there was an interaction between the customer and your salespeople, at the end of the day, you have no data about this interaction. Now there is new tools, new technology to get all this data. And at the end, it allows you to work around what I call hyper-personalization. It's really using the data of your customer to make a better customer journey in the shops. Previously, you were more working on, you have this knowledge of your client with a kind of segmentation. Now you have the specific data of the specific customer who will be in front of your sales guy. And it will allow you to customize the communication with the client, only proposing the product he would like to get. Even you can go into customizing the product you are selling to your client. You can push specific content depending on your client. And also, obviously, you will customize the relationship with your client even in the physical distribution. And the good example on that, it's what Sephora did. It's a basic application. It's My Sephora for their salespeople, and it's really giving the information of the customer to the salespeople. It's based on the loyalty program of Sephora. So each time you go into a Sephora shop, they ask you your loyalty card, so they identify you, and they will ask you a few questions about some new brands, some new product, and you will answer yes and no, and it will enrich the customer database. So it means each interaction in the shop will enrich the database, and you will have a better interaction with your client after all this interaction. So it's also an example of what I call the augmented meeting. Now there will be, it's an iPhone, but there will be an iPhone between the client and the salespeople to enrich the relation in the shop. Third trend is you really have to reinvent your point of sale around try to create a brand experience, I will say, with your customer. So the objective of your point of sale will not be only to sell, because as I showed you previously, your client is maybe going to buy online, hopefully on your website, but not all the time. But at least you have to use your point of sale to make him like your brand, better understand your product, and to create this this specific brand experience. Here I put few examples of big players who did so. So that means when we spoke about Bass Pro, which is an outdoor sport reseller, he really create place when you can try the product in the point of sale. So it's really a kind of leisure place to really try all the product. For IKEA, it's really the link between the website when you start configuring your kitchen and then the point of sale to finalize the purchase and to have some advice from salespeople. And the last one, the well-known one, the Apple Store, it's really demo places when you can try all the product easily. So the first objective is not always selling, it's really have a different experience with the brands, with the product. And as a consequence, they have a big impact on the profile of salespeople. And I discussed with some head of distribution who told me, we are not trying to get the best sales guy. That's no more the big capability I'm looking for. I'm looking with special salespeople. So that means with passion, with people able to communicate on their passion, really be very close to my clients. So the sales capability is not the first focus for them. So that's why we have to work on what will be the profile of salespeople, how to commission them. There will be big change on that. And the second point is how to finance the physical store. If you are doing less sales in your physical point of sale, either you close it or you think it's really key in the development of your client relationship. And it's what we do believe. That means you have to invest in your shop to create a good relationship with your client. So that means to promote your brand, to promote your product. And when I discuss with some of my clients, very often the distribution budget is under the distribution part. I think you should get budget from the communication part, you should get budget from the customer relationship part, because your point of sale are playing a big role in that. And at the end, due to all this change, the structure of the distribution will change, the point of sale will have to be changed, and even your capillarity. So what we had is now it's not the same concept everywhere. You have to play with different kind of concept. From what we call the flagship store to have a nice experience with your brand, with your product, towards what we call relay points. It's how to make the delivery of a product easier for your customer. So it's a place where your client will just pick up the product they order online or even they order in another shop. So you have to play with all this kind of concept to really answer all the needs of your clients and create this new immersive customer experience. What we do think is that with the development of e-commerce, so obviously it will depend on the category of product, there will be a big pressure on revenue generated per square meter. So at a certain stage, we think that all the leasing costs will decrease because there is no economics in certain place to have so high lease. So there is a way to decrease the cost of your point of sale by renegotiating it. Second thing is that you have to work on a new physical distribution to really reinforce your brand, reinforce the link your client have with your product. So that means new concept, new salespeople in your shops. And how to increase the client relationship in the store, it's really having people more, I would say, more assistance-oriented. So it's not only salespeople. You have to do after-sales in your shop. You have to do some recommendation in your shop. You have to adapt the commissioning model around that. And at the end, there is also this question, do I have to go to franchise or not? And obviously, if we are working more and more on the customer relationship, it's a bit harder to do it through franchise, but it's feasible. And as a conclusion from this study, so it was more towards physical distribution. First, we do believe that physical distribution has a great future and will be key to present your product, to present your brand, and to really have your customer live a unique experience with your brand. Second thing, around digitalization, it's really a unique opportunity in terms of promotion of your product, promotion of your brand in the point of sales. So all these technologic levers have to be used to enrich the experience with your brand. And the last thing, the business model of the point of sale will change in the future. They cannot rely only on the sale. They will rely on what we are doing in terms of communication and enriching the relation with your client. Thank you.